Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this event. This is SOI Tech Series. We typically have this event quarterly, where we invite guests from the industry and also from our staff to share some of the technical developments to the public and also to the students and also to the staff. We notice that there's almost no student now. It's because it is during semester break, right? So they are not having school. That's why naturally we don't have any students. But typically when we have it during term time, students will be here. Okay. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Rudy. I'll be the section of RP and SOI specifically. So we have an idea about the school. Oops. So the School of Infocom is one of the original school when RP was set up in 2002. Okay, at that time we only have two diploma, full-time diploma, but now we have expanded to 6, and then we have 4 specialist diploma also. On top of that, we also have lots of short courses available for people to continue their lifelong learning. We have about 80 staff full-time, supplemented by adjunct or associate lecturers, 40 of them. So all of us are experienced. That's why we are able to carry out many of the projects, lecturing, and so on. Okay, so this is the list of the programs in case you're wondering what we cover, what we have. Again, 6 full-time diploma for the 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And then we also have the specialist diploma meant for the adult. The school is very vibrant. You can see some of the pictures where the students are involved. We sometimes have the impression that IT students just stick their face onto the monitor, but that's not the case. We certainly have a vibrant student life. The students are also active in competition, and many of the competition ideas actually come from this SOI Tech series, right? They come, they listen, they get some ideas, they approach a lecturer, and then they embark on competition. And we all, if you're not familiar with the competition that is being held in Singapore, when we talk about competitions, typically hackathons. Okay, so the hackathons, they require ideas of what IT can provide as a solution, but it cannot be just talking. As IT student, we are not just talking, we need to do, right? So the student also need to develop solution, at least a prototype of the solution. And this demonstrate some of the winnings of our students. Okay, that's all I have for the introduction of the school. Okay, so tonight event is quite exciting. We have 2 industry leaders here going to share with us some of the KNIME specialty and also prowess. Okay, so first we have Grab, that they will share about innovating analytics, audit analytics with KNIME, a journey of empowerment at Grab Internal Audit. We have 2 speakers, Evan Choong. Evan is a seasoned audit professional, having worked with Ernst & Young, Singtel, and spearheading the APAC compliance analytics at AIG before leading the audit innovation team at Grab. As a chartered accountant, certified internal auditor, certified information system auditor, Evan holds a unique blend of expertise with a strong academic background, including bachelor's in information systems, master of accounts, and more recently in 2002, executive MBA from Quantic School of Business and Technology. His rich experience is diverse. Industry has honed his skill in technical auditing, GRC, and analytics consulting. With him is Jamin Teo. Jamin is an experienced audit analytics manager at Grab, based on the regional office in Singapore, where he guides the technical aspect of the audit innovation team. Throughout his 10 years career concentrating on data analytics within the internal audit function, Jamin has taken an active role in strengthening audit capabilities across several financial institutions. He is committed to empowering auditors by enabling them to leverage data for effective auditing through the means of automation and data analytics. He currently holds a bachelor degree in information systems. So without further ado, we have our first speaker from Grab.
Right. Thanks, Rudy, for the introduction. So thanks KNIME and thanks RP for organizing this and inviting us to come and share a little bit in terms of the journey that we have taken. Today we are here to share with you the journey that we have taken to innovate internal audit activities and our internal audit program with the use of analytics and data empowerment. Right. So who are we? I'm Evan, right? I lead the directions and the strategies of what we are doing in the internal audit team with our data program. Alongside with me is Jamin. Jamin leads up our technical blueprint, right, of how do we approach all of our technical issues and set up our environment, and how do we actually use KNIME. Right. For audiences that may not be familiar with Grab, let me just give a quick introduction. Grab is a leading super app in Southeast Asia. We are focused on Southeast Asia, in serving the Southeast Asia market, and we are largely providing 3 areas. Number 1 is mobility services. We are a ride-hailing company where we would match passengers with drivers and providing them the ability to travel to places on an on-demand service, right? And then we've got deliveries. We've got deliveries for food, bringing your favorite food close to you, make it convenient for you. We've got supermarket as well. We've got deliveries, bringing from the shelves of supermarket to your doorstep. And also we've also got express services where we are, if you need to do customer to customer delivery, right? You can engage the express services to bring door-to-door deliveries. And last but not least, we've got financial services. It's all things in your GrabPay wallet. We can make payments at a lot of lots of food shops endpoints. A lot of times these days I don't even bring out my wallet. I just take the Grab app, and I can make my payments at the stores where I usually dine at. Right. We've also got insurance services. It's a very quick process of onboarding the application. If you're traveling, it's like 5 or 6 clicks, and you've got your travel insurance done and sorted. And also there's also like micro investments in there, making use of the balances in your wallet, in your GrabPay wallet, to do like investment services. So just to give you a bit of idea of how we have grown, Grab is a relatively young company. We have grown serving from 1 country to 8 countries over the last 11 years. And we've grown from serving 1 city to over 500 cities in Southeast Asia, right? And I think asking anybody, most people in Southeast Asia, if you were to ask them about Grab, it's a familiar name, it's a common branding, and 1 in 20 people in Southeast Asia are using Grab services. All right, diving a bit deeper into us, right? I'm from the internal audit team, and the internal audit function, basically it's a 3rd line of defense within our organization structure. And our main focus is to identify potential risk areas, and to also perform timely audits across the different risk areas within a business organization, to then highlight areas where the businesses might have oversight over, right? We are largely broken into 3 areas. We've got a mobility and deliveries team. They watch over all things on wheels. So your deliveries, your transport, right, is businesses related to that. We've got a GrabFin team where they deal with all things wallets. So anything in your GrabPay wallet and businesses related to that, the GrabFin audit team watches over. And we've got the technology audit team as well, that watch over the technologies that cuts across all services, right? And within there sits the audit innovation team, which is where Jamin and I are. The Grab audit team is also, the Grab audit team operates out of 4 countries, right? So I've given you a bit of context in terms of how our organization is. We're fast-paced, we're a large organization, and transactions-wise, it's huge, right? And we being a audit function, we are spread across different geographies, we are spread across different countries. And together, I mean, having that two situations, we faced a number of problems that we needed to look at, right? Firstly, traditional IA strategies versus emerging risks. Internal audit is a traditional business, right? There's a lot of traditional activities related to internal audit practices. A very high level one, it's, when an audit team comes in, an audit team looks at your business process, and to understand what your business is doing, they could apply sampling strategy to then have an evaluation whether, are your controls operating in an effective manner. This is backed by statistical studies, way early in the whole audit profession has started, right? Now, if let's say we put that into context today, right, in a company like Grab, where we deal with more than 10 million transactions a day, if I use a statistical sampling to audit a certain area, and I come in and I apply 25 samples, 45 samples, 100 samples. Now, 100 samples in a landscape of 10 million transactions, that becomes very hard to convince yourself that, all right, I'm seeing just based on this, where data analytics makes a difference, right? Because data analytics now, I can use the power of computing to then comb through my 10 million transactions if I have to. Grab being such a diverse organization, right? As I shared earlier, we cut across 3 large business groups. There is so many different business directions that we are doing. We have a very large auditable landscape, meaning it's just the large area of pockets of risk areas that we need to cover. And this is only tackled by a small team of 25 that we have today. So imagine this, right? I've got 25 auditors today and 239 landscape. Each auditable entity has got maybe 20, 30 different controls, different risks, right? So physically, it's very, very challenging for audit to actually cover in a large scale, right? And so we need to innovate ourselves. We need to change the way that we are doing things. And audit is a cyclical process, right? The traditional audit business is very periodic, but then we have a business that is ever changing, right? The Grab business 10 years ago has changed dramatically from today. So it's very difficult for me to go in and say that, okay, I'll do an audit with you 3 years later, going back in the same cycle to kind of review again, because the business may no longer be relevant again. So how do we then maximize this experience that we had from this one audit for us to then continuously gain comfort and control, like gain comfort over what we have audited and how are we going to be auditing in the next coming year or two. Now, a more direct approach is with an audit team, we just plant a few people in to do the analytics together with the audit team, right? So for example, like Jamin and myself, we could just get ourselves involved, partner together with these 23 other auditors and say, all right, what's your audit topic now? And I can go in and I can do the development work for you and this specific topic. But that itself restricts us, 2-person, to cover maybe 10 audits a year, right? 15 audits a year. And that's still very limiting because when we have such a large risk landscape, we need to cover more areas, cover deeper areas, and we need to be more automated, right? And so when we first joined the team 2 years ago, we felt that, okay, look, let's put a pause on this first, right? And let's move ahead with thinking a bit more boldly. We think a bit more boldly and let's go for a moonshot idea of make a 10 times difference, right? 10 times difference, and how do we achieve that? Is to then have the entire team to have a digital first approach, right? And in order to have the entire team to deliver a digital first approach, we had to come up with a strategy. The strategy that we deployed back then was, we wanted to work on 3 pillars of analytics. Number 1, we have analytics that could be descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, right? This is the more familiar area that everybody when we are doing data analytics, we go into. We set in rules. We could use newer strategies like machine learning to identify anomalies, right? We go in intelligence. Intelligence is making use of existing data. They may not be exceptions. They may not be a problem, But if, let's say, my intelligence tells me that I have a rapidly growing business segment that is 10 times the size of what it was just a week ago, right? Increased volume, inherent risk increases. Now, is that an area of consideration for audit team to then look into this area and start to plan out something for this business, right? And also we've got automation. A lot of things that we are doing in the past is very manual. You review. A lot of people like to use Excel spreadsheets in the industry. Excel spreadsheets, although you're using a software, but a lot of things that you're doing, you still have to repeat. You still have to click to filter. You have to control copy, control paste the formulas. You have to drag the formulas across to just get the results of what you used to get, right? And so, making use of newer technologies, we provide automation solutions. We schedule things. We don't manually work on things as much, right? So with that, it's meant to be a flywheel effect to then enable and empower our audit team, right? With these three pillars of innovation, we will then power our auditors to be able to do more dynamic risk assessment, more better risk sensing, and more importantly in the audit space is to be more forward-looking to our risk rather than looking back at what the business has done before and trying to find things from what has happened before. Right. So to give you an idea of the analytics journey that we have taken, when we first started 2 years ago, what we came in the time and we thought right, let's not rush into building things. A very common thing as developers, right? When we come in the project, the first thing we do, all right, get our hands dirty, start coding, start building things and all that. But we took a pause on that and we came out with a strategy of how we want to do it. We decided on a 3-year roadmap journey and recognizing the fact that, as we across the entire team, right? You are training across, you're training 22 other people, 23 other people who come from diverse background. You are accountants, you are IT people, you are science people, right? And, it just takes time for different people to learn how to do analytics, right? So we focus a lot on laying the foundation, really creating a portfolio that, better suits for us, that, we know that we're going to go into this program and we're going to go into it and commit to it in the next 1-2 years, right? After we have strategized our approach, we then go in to build our projects. Once we've done with building our projects ready, we started building our projects, we started building trust, right? We started getting confidence of our stakeholders of like, hey, you know what? The things that we are building is interesting and it's generating results and it's seeing results that people have not seen before, right? And that's where, we know we've achieved something, right? After a year later, we know that we've hit a milestone, which is we are able to achieve, have a planned audit analytics. So today, within our team, all of our audits in the last 1 year would have deployed analytics, and not just analytics that are reusable, analytics that are scalable, right? Because we had designed them in this framework that we have approached with. Now, 1 year moving on from there, we continue to Kaizen, we continue to work on the areas that we have done and continue to question ourselves. What can we do more? What can we do more? What can we do differently? And how can we get better results? And after a year of continuous pushing, working with the auditors, working within the team itself, right? We hit the next milestone that we had planned for, which is then to start to have continuous auditing programs. So continuous auditing programs basically takes what we have done in our audits, we run it in an automated fashion, and it's just generating results on the day-to-day. Now, why is this area so important? Because it makes us better business partner. A lot of audit functions struggle with the ability to then be a better business partner because a lot of information when you finish your audit is information related to 6 months ago, 1 year ago, right? And today, when I can start to find results on a very timely manner, I can run my schedules down to a day, right? And if I'm telling my business, we have got these insights and we are able to then share the insights with the business team would then be able to work with us to help them to better manage the risks that they are facing and to mitigate their controls much better. All right. So with all that we've done, right, we still continue to, for us, right, continuous learning is very important. It's important to look back at how we have deployed the solutions we have done It's important to look at how we were doing things and to consider, like, we have invested all this time in doing things in this manner. How else can we do better? What do we need to streamline and change? And it's always a continuous effort to make things different, right? Eventually, what we plan for is to have, apart from just one or two continuous auditing solutions, we want to have a continuous audit assurance program that scales wider, scales larger all across the organization. Now, going back a bit of a program, right? I mentioned about, I've got 22 others auditors to work with, and they came from diverse background, right? It's, and within the team itself, we are relatively mature professionals, right? So we're not all fresh grads, all, in the new generation that is all excited about programming, about analytics, right? It's something that we got to retrain a lot of people that we work with. And what we started off with is to train them in two areas, provide them two areas. Number one is to provide them with the basic understanding of what's data analytics, right? For us, we do programming. When we deal with data, we deal with programming analytics. It's very natural and very comfortable for us. But then there is the other spectrum, right? Where there will be a group of people who don't really understand why are we doing data wrangling? Why are we taking a structured approach into how are we cleansing the data, preparing the data, and presenting the data, right? And that's how we got the entire team to self-learn, self-pace, right? To complete the data analytics certificate. And on the other side about it is to provide them with the environment of the technology to allow them to work on the analytics work itself, right? The tool that we chose KNIME because KNIME was a tool that was code-free, low-code, and it was something that I could share with every one of my team on how to do it. Now, the important thing now is no longer about memorizing like Python syntax, right? But the important thing is about what do you inspire to get out from a certain data workflow, right? And then we can work with the visual notes to extract the information, right? So I'll hand over to Jamin to take you on the second half of our journey.
So with the auditors having the knowledge and being trained using the Google Data Analytics program, as well as all the different trainings that KNIME provided, the self-paced courses, we aspire for all the auditors to do their own basic analytics. We would leverage on divide and conquer strategy. So in the sense that the auditors will then tackle all the basic kinds of analytics so as not to intimidate them and give them the confidence that they are able to do the analytics step by step. They can start from small, simple ones, like maybe just some filtering or as such using KNIME. But then as evidenced by now, actually most of the auditors are also comfortable with actually using directly accessing data warehouses, extracting data, doing joins and all that. So the majority of the analytics that auditors are going to do in an audit is going to be basic. This is like we look into the descriptives, we look at data quality. These are all things that as part of the auditors, this part and parcel of their BAU. So we would want the auditors to be comfortable in doing that, whereas the audit innovation team, which is Evan, myself, and Harjit, will then focus on the more complicated stuff. So with everyone equipped to do basic analytics, we can increase the number of examples of where data analytics can be used to further increase the assurance that we can provide deeper assurance in the work that we do. In terms of the more advanced analytics, examples would be like machine learning, anomaly detection, natural language processing, OCR, clustering and regression, and also process mining. So these are some of the examples. By no means this is a full exhaustive list, but yeah, so this is how we strategize for the auditors to take up data analytics. So now I'll just give a brief demo of one of the analytics that was previously done inside an audit, where they were trying to check whether national identity numbers that are keyed in by either the drivers or the passengers, especially during KYC, as part of their registration, whether these formats are correct or valid. So just to introduce you, so if you're not familiar with, this is actually how generally how a KNIME workflow looks like. It's a low-code, no-code tool. So actually every step of your analytics is actually demarcated by a node. They're all linked together. So one step to another step, you can see visually. If you're very familiar with flowcharts, basically you should be able to very easily decipher how a workflow looks, how a KNIME workflow works. We adapted the CRISP-DM methodology in terms of how we analyze data, so that we ensure that every stage, the 5 different stages, accessing the data, understanding the data, preparing the data, modeling, and then evaluation. Through the CRISP-DM methodology, we ensure that every stage is taken care of. Yeah, so that is how we generally organize our workflow. So in this example, we look at NRIC. I think everyone is very familiar with NRIC. We know that the check digit, which is the last letter, is usually can be calculated based on the first 7 digits of the number. So this is the original workflow that we had, but this might be a bit cumbersome for auditors to use. So the workflow itself is something that can be developed on the desktop version of KNIME, which is currently free. 1 year after we used KNIME and we found it to be useful, we actually upgraded to the server version. The server version actually allows us to have a web interface built on top. The web interface actually still uses workflows. It's just that the web interface is the nodes, or the individual nodes, are actually organized slightly differently, but the web pages are actually still using KNIME workflows to be presented. So I'll just give you an example of how the web portal, the KNIME server looks like. Yep. So when you come to the first page, this after you log in, of course. After you log in, this is how the general KNIME workflows look like. We have different folders where you can each park all the different analytics inside. We have quite a few national IDs that just demonstrate the Singapore one. So basically, you can just run the workflow. We follow a 3-step process. So basically, there are only 3 steps. You upload the file, you place your settings, and then the results come out. So that's the 3 basic steps. I'll just give you a demo. So at here, we upload a file, which I've already uploaded in the background. So there's a file which contains all the different NRICs, and then you come to a setting page. So this is where you configure whatever you want to configure as the output. In this case, we will identify within the file that I've uploaded. So in the file that I've uploaded, there are 5 columns. I'll identify the NRIC column, and then I will provide a column name for the output, which will tell me whether the NRIC is a valid NRIC or not a valid NRIC. And these are just to customize the output. Like if it's a correct letter, I will put a true. If it's a wrong checksum letter, then I'll put false. Or if it's not NRIC format. And then the next step is the results already. So you can see it's actually quite simple for auditors to use, or anyone actually to use. In this case, just to disclaim, this is mock data. So this the data that you see here is mock. There's no Lorong 6 Orchard Road. Yeah. So, and that's why also partially why most of it is false. So it's just randomly generated numbers. As you can see, the workflow is very easy to use, and after arriving at this stage, you can actually just download all the different cuts of the data. You can download all the records, or even just partial data filtered. as what Evan mentioned earlier about business partnership, with this workflow already created and used by auditors, as in the auditors have access to it and are able to use it. We also actually opened up this workflow to the second line, the risk and compliance people, which offer them the opportunity to also use them and help them in their risk and compliance work. So this is also how internal audit also tries to be a good risk advisor to the other lines of the business. Sorry. Yeah, so as I mentioned, yeah, there are three different steps: the upload, configure, and result steps. Another solution that we created is actually doing the performing OCR on the contracts. So OCR is basically trying to extract text out of images. So in the past, much earlier on, the contracts were actually scanned and uploaded into a system before they were actually contracts were actually scanned and stored as an image, PDF, and then stored on the system itself. It was only until much later that they decided to do the e-signing and all that. So actually there were quite a few number of contracts that were actually still in image format. So for this particular audit, the scope reached up, as in covered about 20,000 over merchants. And for these 20,000 merchants, there were actually about 30,000 contracts. So as you can see that it's actually not quite possible for any auditor to actually go through all the individual contracts if they want to extract certain data out of it. In this case, what we were trying to do is that the contracts stored in Salesforce we were trying to match those information against what was actually entered into the system. So we're trying to do some reconciliation in this case. And we were able to use KNIME to do all this and perform it within one KNIME workflow itself. I guess KNIME is flexible in that sense that we are able to also not only use the individual nodes that are built in already, we can also use other more advanced languages such as Python and R. And in this case, we used Python to actually do the OCR portion of it. And then the data wrangling will be handled by KNIME. So this provided wider and deeper coverage because auditors don't need to manually go through all the individual contracts and resulted in the time savings of about 70 to 80%. Yeah. So on this slide, we give you just a high-level overview of what we have achieved so far. As the internal audit function on a high level, we aim to provide more targeted audits instead of doing full scope ones. And also we wanted, our focus was also to double down on audit analytics led audit. Data drive efficiency and assurance. And to also focus on the widest impact. So the widest impact will definitely be where we can look into the largest amount of data and go through all of them. In terms of the three pillars that just now Evan as well mentioned, we also have achieved certain projects that fall into these categories. Under analytics, we have also done some clustering techniques. We have used some machine learning to look into permissions of some applications. We have also looked into natural language processing to identify personal information in documents that should not contain them, and also to analyze full population of data to detect any transactional anomalies. We also, not only looking at data within Grab, we also looked at public sources of data. For example, ACRA. ACRA is basically a national business registry of all the companies registered in Singapore. And this would be useful database for us to check maybe whether any merchants, any restaurants are actually still live, or any if their registrations are still valid. And as we have demonstrated just now, we have also looked into the NRIC numbers to verify authenticity of documents. In the intelligence space, we have developed a couple of dashboards that is available to not only the internal auditors, but also to the second line of business, the risk and compliance, or even the operations team. In the first point, we were looking at providing insights into the business operating environment through the lens of applications. I think generally in many organizations, when you will get access to many different applications, and sometimes user access becomes a problem. To ensure that is a problem that it becomes a problem when everybody has a lot of access to every applications, and no one is able to keep track of who has access to what. Or for example, when somebody leaves the company, or whether accesses are appropriately removed or as such. Or in some cases, maybe we are all in the same team, but for some reason, the access that we have is different for the same application, even though we are doing the same work. So the dashboard is actually there to provide some insights into that. We also have a dashboard that is mainly presenting issues. So after going through an audit, we will generally keep track of all the issues in a GRC system, in a system where you will log all the issues. And these issues will then be required for the issue owner or the business to then follow up and remediate and make sure that they fix those issues. So if there are too many issues that are being brought up, or through many different audits, the dashboard will then consolidate them and allow the issue owner or the business to then quickly see what issues are going to be currently in progress, what have been closed, or whether they are overdue. In terms of automation, as we have already procured the KNIME server, so actually we have the capability to do scheduled data processing. KNIME server allows us to schedule to power the dashboards. So basically all the data wrangling that we need to acquire and the refreshing of the dashboards can then be done through automation. And in Grab, we actually use Slack as a main form of communication. And therefore, we also integrated the KNIME server can also allow us actually to directly Slack someone, to send a Slack message to someone, either via a Slack message or also via emails. So looking ahead, in the next year or so, actually, that we have quite a few number of projects that we're very excited to embark on. As what Evan has mentioned, every single audit that we are currently doing now generates a lot of analytics tests, a lot of we have every audit that we have performed now, auditors are actually required to do data analytics and store all these analytics in the form of a KNIME workflow. And with these KNIME workflows all sitting around, it will be good for us to make use of them and turn them into continuous auditing. So since, like for example, a particular test has already been done, for example, in Singapore, and maybe we can actually bring it to another country, for example. Or in another situation, if the test has already been done in Singapore for this particular in place. So the productionization of all these solutions is something that we'll be embarking on. We will also want to increase the integration of email and Slack messaging. I think this is just to give everyone a easy notification of any alerts that needs to be brought to their attention. Especially maybe, for example, like previously we can look into creating alerts for issues that are overdue, for example. Yeah. Grab is also very interested into GPT generative AI, and we are also looking into exploring more GPT-assisted solutions. As we have embarked on some small-scale machine learning examples, we also want to focus more on that in the coming few months. Yeah, so with that, I've ended our presentation. Yeah, thank you very much.
For some questions.
Yeah, do you all have any some questions?
Yeah. So we've got some questions online. We've got a question from David. He's asking if, for the OCR contracts, are they from different formats and is AI required to parse, or the contracts are of standard formats and CV will be used to extract? Either options may be used within the KNIME platform itself and machine learning could be applied to the extracted data. Right. So I think for us, I think the journey that we took on is that when we used KNIME as a workflow coordinator. Within KNIME itself, there's OCR nodes that also works off the base of Tesseract. So while applying Tesseract, the extraction of the information basically pulls the images into a line of text. And subsequently, we then did our own wrangling and apply our own strategies to extract the information. Quality is highly dependent on the scan. Quality is highly dependent on the format of the image that we are scanning. At that point of time, we haven't applied any machine learning techniques. We did more straightforward method of extracting, applying a strategy that we had in place that we thought yield us a good confidence level of the results. Moving forward, as Jamin has mentioned, the next 1 year that's incoming, we want to embark on more machine learning techniques. We want to use more interesting technologies like LLMs, and experiment with how can we increase the confidence level and increase our acquisition of the information coming out from a PDF document that was scanned or a photo of it, right? We've got one more question from Paulo as well. I think Paulo's asking in terms of our data sources of what we're getting, what's our journey like getting KNIME connected to different data sources, our data sources, and also are we extracting all from flat file or how are we connected? The things that we have done, we have a whole different range of connectivity. We've got some dashboards that we are actually connected via API. Through API, we extract information, we feed into our workflows, and we post-process it. KNIME being a technology-first company, we have a very good data warehouse. So that's something that is to our advantage, that we could tap into and we could extract the information. There are also situations where we are working with flat files, but flat files doesn't mean it has to be dead. We've also worked with different strategies of hosting a flat file in a G drive, and allowing different business teams to update specific information if we need it to be continuously updated. And then we read that CSV file or read that G sheet file or Excel file into the KNIME workflow before we post-process it and then subsequently push it up to a dashboard or the final results. Right. So apart from our online questions, do we have any questions from the floor? Yep.
Thank you very much for sharing. Kingdom from Poly. Just a question for your current user base, within Grab, how many people are involved in developing workflows using KNIME, and how many other users who are just trying to look in the question?
Okay. So I think it was asking about what's our user base within KNIME and what are the consumers and what are the developers within it. So I mean, for us, we are sort of like the early adopters within Grab itself. At the moment, our team, we have about 2 to 3 people who are actually developing the KNIME workflow specifically for the internal audit team. I think within Grab itself, there are pockets of different teams experimenting with developing KNIME workflows. But a lot of them are working more on the local platform. Does that answer the question?
Any plans? So I believe currently it is being used mainly by the audit group of people. Any plans to scale it up like finance, human resources?
Yes. So I think this is something in terms of, I mean, every team has got a different tool set and a different strategy that they apply. So while for us, as we share the solutions and we as internal audit work with different teams, we share with them as well, what's the way that we are doing. and we share the different teams of having these using the tools. And that's where we see some level of adoption with some teams working on a local level of what they're developing. So I can't say for the other teams whether are they going to adopt for their process or not. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just curious, so you all have been like in this internal audit for kind of 3 years. So if let's say there's nothing that's confidential, can you all like maybe share something that like the risk or gap that you all detect because of your running all this workflow? Let's say you have any example that you can share?
I think we can't go into the details of the results that we extract out for audit. But generally, I mean, if let's say you look at the NRIC example that we presented earlier, it's not uncommon for people to submit information that are inaccurate, that are maybe falsified, right? And it depends on, that we have got processes in place, physical processes in place. We have got different stages, right? And we are working in Southeast Asia country, and within Southeast Asia itself, some countries maybe have got more varied types of identity cards and stuff like that increases the complexity of validating is certain information accurate or not. So these are some of the examples that on a very light touch we can share that it does yield some results. And because it yields some results, the second line, like the risk teams, see the value that's coming out from it, and they also work together with us to figure out how do they adopt the same kind of analytics that they do along on a more regular basis. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. I have two, but the first one is what is actually your main challenge when you embark in this journey of data analytics in the audit setting? That's the first question. The second one is, do you find difficulty in lifting everybody up in their skills, especially the auditors and so on, and embrace this technology?
Okay. So the question is surrounding the challenge of what's the challenge level of getting a team to embrace a new tool, a new way of working, and a new technique, right? Definitely it comes with challenges. When we first introduced the idea at the time, there were a lot of pushbacks about, this is not my area, right? I'm not a developer. Why should I touch this, right? But at the same time, we also recognize that it's the way moving forward, right? If let's say we don't learn these new ways of doing things, then the new graduates today that are coming out, they would already have been equipped with all these skill sets already. Like I mentioned, right, our team is a team of experienced professionals. And so, when we're looking at the new university students, the new diploma students that are coming out, they're already equipped with a skill set that our generation probably is still very new to. And that's where we did a lot of more like close touch coaching, training, and sharing about the values of doing things, the ease of doing things, and also why this is the approach of how we can adopt it, so that in the future our work is just going to get easier and better. I mean, the value of this one, of course, we must demonstrate it, right? Like whatever you learn and do now, it's not about just learning analytics, but it's about you are developing a solution that is going to be repeatable, is scalable. It's a solution that, it's a very good team solution, right? I post it up, I can share with Jamin. Jamin can quickly see what's going on and can reply back to me, and we can work on it together. So it becomes a very good team tool as well.
We still have a few questions online. I think Paulo asked, do we connect directly to the data source or sources? Connected to a data source or sources directly, or is the data received offline? I think, yeah, so we generally receive data in a few forms, but mainly we encourage auditors to get it directly from the data warehouse itself. As Evan mentioned, we are a tech company. So actually a lot of the data are already stored inside data warehouses. I think that's one of the advantages of being in a tech company. Where my previous companies, they are more traditional, that usually that becomes issue when they have to set up pipelines to data pipelines to actually transfer the data. But in Grab, the data sources are mainly from the data warehouses itself. But KNIME also allows us to actually access CSV files and Excel files. Yep, there's also share and reuse, and are these workflows governed? So workflows in general are developed by okay, so I assume you're referring to the ones that are on the web portal itself. So if you were able to catch it just now, actually on the main page, actually we have divided the workflows into public ones and audit ones. So basically for public ones, these are the workflows that we are able to share with the rest of within Grab itself. And there are those audit specific ones that are we will keep, which we will use internally. For example, like maybe workflows that are related to HR data. These are not things that we want to allow the whole of Grab to have access to. Yeah, so that's how we govern it on the web portal itself. And we have also one more question from Paulo regarding do the Grab audit team have some knowledge of KNIME desktop analytics, or do they mainly consume the web portal resources? So as you mentioned, we want to empower the auditors to use KNIME. So actually we encourage them as much as possible to create their audit test steps using KNIME itself. So actually all the auditors are actually using KNIME individually on themselves on the desktop, not necessarily on the server. It's only when at the end of the audits, we will consolidate and see which audit might be a suitable candidate to do continuous auditing. And then that's where Evan, myself, and Harjit will then look into how to productionize that into a continuous auditing solution, either on the KNIME server as a scheduled run, or if it's suitable, then maybe on a web portal interface.
I think one part about linking back to the slides earlier, right? One thing that we wanted to achieve through this is that 10 times effect. So essentially what we did is that instead of embedding 2 developers into a team of 23 or 3 developers in a team of 22, we now have a team of 25 developers. Everybody can do their own little snippet of development. Everybody can do their own snippet of analytics, and it becomes a very distributed environment that we all achieve 10 times the effect of what 2 or 3% can do.
Other than using KNIME to do internal audit on for the data integrity, do you also use KNIME to do any analytic work to analytic, so you can help and make the management how to improve their operation, how to increase the business profitability?
Yes and no. Yes, on the perspective where any insights that we see, we have dialogues and conversations with the relevant the audit team and the business teams. No, in terms of we don't specifically go there and like, okay, let's analyze this business and how can we find something for the business or better business improvement. Because for us, we are internal audit, right? So our core business is still risk management, and we will still follow based on our risk management strategy.
But any other team doing the car analytics work?
I think across Grab there are teams that would actually do such analytics works, right? So I mean, being a tech firm, all right, we drive our business on data, we drive our business on analytics and insights. Okay.
Just curious, right? Say you mentioned that you now have 26 developers, but how do you manage reusability in the sense like to prevent someone else from redeveloping the same thing, and how do you then manage your various workflows? I would expect a lot of workflows will be created because you have 26 developers. Correct.
So for us, we consolidate our workflows into a common repository in a team. We develop into 3 different teams, right? And across the 3 different teams, we sort of know roughly which areas are covered by what kind of areas are covered by which teams. Us being an innovation team, we are sort of like the center of excellence. We sort of like there to curate the entire program for everybody. So if let's say I know the technology audit team has developed something that's business related that downstream the mobilities team can use, right? When they're touching on an audit at the time, we can advise them, hey, look into something like that. We have something similar. The other side of it is that like what Jamin has mentioned, if it's a candidate that is suitable, that is usable across different business lines, we might just develop it into a web portal tool, or we might just publish it within our team to tell them like, look, this is something that everybody can use. Go and use it out in your next audit, and then they can deploy it across.
But how would you all manage the accuracy of the workflow? Like someone develops something,
Yep.
would anyone take a second look at it? Or how is that process being managed?
So the development of workflow for a specific audit or audit step process, right? In audit, we always have someone who's preparing, we have someone who's reviewing. So that's why it's important that we train the entire team, because now my auditor who does the work, I have a manager in there that can review his work as well. We all understand how to develop on KNIME. So that's how we govern in terms of the process of how it's done for that specific audit. Of course, when it's being pulled out and used in a wider environment, then maybe it's a different, like our team will go in there and review and to facilitate that it becomes something that's more suitable for a wider usage and not so specific. All right. Power BI is a visualization endpoint, right? So we use Power BI and Tableau as well. More Power BI for us. But to us, we see it in three main segments. Number one is data ingestion. Number two is data processing, and number three is visualization. So while KNIME has got dashboards and interface, right? But we find much more ease and use in terms of visualizing and to create the right colors and touch points on a Power BI endpoint. Flip side, Power BI can do analytics work, right? But processing on large amount of data might be very cumbersome. So we might then we want to reduce the load on Power BI and do all the pre-processing on our server before we push it out for visualization.
Like KNIME, do you consider other software platforms before you actually go through process?
We have considered various platforms, and in terms of evaluating the ease of use, the cost of use, and the availability of information, we decided to invest our time and effort into KNIME, and that was an early stage when we started the journey lah.
You might share which platform
Yeah, we can take it offline.
What on the anomaly detection that you have mentioned? What techniques you are using for specific techniques that you apply for the transaction, detecting anomalies in the transaction?
Specifics. Okay, so I mean so one of the strategies that we applied, we use clustering methods to identify user assignments in a system. So part of the technology security world, we should all have appropriate user access to certain applications. For example, if let's say I am in the finance team and I have access to the transaction, the transport application, it will look very weird, right? Especially if my access on a transport application is showing that I have some overriding ability. Traditionally, you would have to understand my business role. You have to understand the business role of the application before you would potentially spot that this doesn't look right. But using clustering techniques, we basically could bundle together people in the finance team, people in the products team, and we see that it looks a bit weird that suddenly somebody from the finance team is having an access in the front-end application, and access rights may not be suitable. And so we identify that as a higher risk transaction, high risk assignment, and then that we could follow up manually in terms of working with the teams or working with the auditors. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Please stay for the room.
So now you have a microphone.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me fine? Okay. So the next talk is about using KNIME platform for teaching data analytics. It will be given by Dr. Stefan Helfrich. Stefan is responsible for academic relations at KNIME since 2018. Is to make sure that educators have all the necessary materials and support. This I can attest. This is for sure. Before he worked as a bioimage analyst at University of Constance, supporting researchers in various projects in image and data analysis. Okay, so without further ado, Dr. Stefan.
Thank you very much, Rudy. Let me share my screen and make sure that everyone actually sees what we see here. Good. All right. Thank you, Rudy. First of all, for everyone in the room, I have brought swag from Germany. I have put blood, sweat, and tears into bringing it here. Please take it. I will not take anything home with me. Sorry for those of you online. Unfortunately, that's not possible. Thank you for the introduction. What I thought I would do today, since a lot of you mentioned that already when asking questions, that your faculty, you're teaching, this is your bread and butter. We have now from Grab actually had an interesting industry talk on internal auditing. Thank you for that, folks. That was very impressive and very interesting. I assume that we actually have a mix of people in the room, and I can take off my mask for the audio. A mix of people in the room that you already have used KNIME, but I guess there are also a couple in here who have never started the analytics platform, right? So what I thought I would do is, because we have only a couple of weeks ago, we've released a new version of KNIME with a new user interface. I will treat all of you like you've never seen that user interface before. Show you around, give you a couple of ideas, maybe pitfalls when you go back and start teaching again after the semester break. Before I do that, I quickly wanted to talk about KNIME, us as a company. So we are a software company. We're roughly 200 plus minus people these days. And when I say software company, we build software. We do no, actually at some point I have to change that slide. We do barely any consulting. So that's slightly different to other companies out there. We really focus on the framework, on the software development. We started out as a spin-off from the University of Constance. Michael, our CEO, was a professor for bioinformatics and information mining at the university for a couple of years. We have our headquarters in Zurich, Switzerland these days, but also big offices in Germany, and one in Austin, Texas. Lovely offices, lovely cities to visit, and a picture of us at one of our annual corporate retreats where we try to bring together the entire company. So when I say we build software, part of that, and it really is only part of that, and thanks to the previous presentation, you already know that we don't only build the KNIME Analytics Platform, which is our open source, free to use platform for data analysis, data science, data engineering. You can transform, you can do it, and all that without coding, if that's what you want. If you want control, then you can go in, and we've heard that Grab, they use it more as an orchestration tool. There's some Python involved there, so you can actually call out Python scripts, execute them from within a KNIME workflow. I think that part is interesting because teaching students programming, if you don't actually want to do that and want to focus on the concepts, KNIME actually is a great tool. And I see a couple of familiar faces who use KNIME for teaching already, so I think they can attest to that. But that's not the only software that we built. We've previously seen that. The Grab folks are actually using KNIME Server. So we have built software for the entire data science lifecycle, meaning building workflows. That's what we have here on the left side, creation of workflows. That's covered by the analytics platform. Again, free, open source, you execute them locally. But then there's a lot of work that goes into the right-hand side, and that's the productionization. And I think the Grab folks can actually talk to that. Coming up with the first version of the workflow, that's usually the easy part, but then catching all the edge cases, making it usable by the folks who are not so tech savvy, not so KNIME savvy. That's actually where a lot of time goes into. And this part, the entire productionization, is covered by a commercial product that was once called KNIME Server, and it's now superseded by the KNIME Business Hub. And I'll show you later also how that looks like in practice. We've seen an example of a web portal application already, but I will actually show you how that feels like in the analytics platform, from taking a workflow and putting that online, making it available through the web portal, through the KNIME Business Hub in that case. So without further ado, I will actually switch over to the analytics platform and give you a tour of the new user interface. So let us close this, and I'll try to stare at my screen here so that I don't get confused with the lag that you will see here on the screen. I'll make sure that it's not too problematic. So if you've fired up KNIME before, you'll see that it looks slightly different now with the new user interface. The idea here is that you actually can immediately dive in, and you have a couple of example workflows that you can really you open up KNIME, you can click on a workflow, on an example workflow, it opens that up immediately. You can give that a try. You can zoom in, zoom out. That functionality is all there, but you don't have to start from a blank page, but there's immediately something that you can take a look at. What else has changed? We see already here, we still have the workflow editor. I mentioned that. Here on the left-hand side, there is the description view. This, in this case, shows us a description of the workflow that I can manually change, basically. But as soon as I select a node, this will actually switch over and show me the description of a node, and also give me an idea of what the node actually does, what are the settings that a node offers, and so on. One thing that you'll immediately notice if you've used the old, the legacy user interface, basically, where you really used to have to right-click, open the context menu to set the parameters, configure a node, and execute it. You can immediately do that on the highest level when hovering over a node to get this node action bar, which gives you direct access. So there's a button for the configuration of a node. There's a button for executing a node, canceling the execution, resetting a node. So that saves you one click. Basically, you don't have to open up the context menu anymore, and really executing a node is as easy as clicking the button. The progress bar scrolls through. The status light jumps to green, and the node has been executed. What you'll notice immediately is that down here, you can take a look at the data that is available at the output port that is output by the node, basically. And we had this node monitor already in the old version of KNIME, but there it was already a preview. It had limited functionality. This is now really fully fledged. You can sort, you can change how values are rendered. You can search in here, you can filter. So this really is your view on the data right at first glance. Basically. So it's easier, clicking around, opening the context menu and trying to figure out which menu entry corresponds to which output port, basically. All right, I assume at least we can see in the room again. I'm sharing in Zoom as well. So I hope that you can see us in Zoom as well again. Good. So where were we? The Space Explorer on the left-hand side, right? So this is actually, again, very similar to what you already know. You can have workflows in here. There's folders in here. We don't call them workflow groups anymore, but folders, just to not confuse people. You can open folders and so on. This is all just like you know. What I actually want to do, and I'll try to be quick and show you a couple of things and then jump a bit ahead, so to not overstretch on the time. So what I do is go back to the getting started screen here. You can always access that via the home tab up here, and I would like to create a new workflow, and this is also now very much more apparent how to do that. There's a big plus. I can click that. I'll call that DC demo for the sake of it. It'll create a workflow, and I think it's the small things here that instead of starting with an empty workflow with what do I do now, it actually prompts you, okay, this is how you get started. Build your workflow by dropping your data or nodes in. And I think for teaching in particular, there's no questions in that. It's clear what you're supposed to do. And the node repository acts exactly like you're used to. You can drag and drop nodes over here. The Space Explorer allows you to actually still drop data in here. And that's quickly what I want to do. I will delete this node here, jump to the Space Explorer. I'll import an Excel file. You know that already. I'll import a CSV file. I'll execute this. We see the node monitor at the bottom. That is all as you know. One thing though, you don't actually have to use the node repository anymore. There is now a quick node adding dialog, and this is activated when you take the output port. You drag and drop it to anywhere. You already can see that there's a small plus sign there. I let loose, and it opens up a search dialog. And it's the small stuff, right? And the good thing about this is you can just type in here now. You can add a joiner, and it only suggests nodes that are compatible with the output port that I'm using. Now with the data output port, that's kind of boring. But if you're working with model output ports, it's just one step or one potential pitfall that we're avoiding, but just suggesting nodes that actually work in this particular case. So I'll add a joiner here, can connect the nodes, open the configuration dialog. And we'll actually see, I'll add a matching criterion here, not dive too deep into what we're actually doing. The idea is to build a prediction model, but first of all, we have to merge our data together based on some joint information. That's the phone number that we have here as a unique identifier. You can easily add that in here, and it's just a lot faster to actually build the workflows. One thing that I want to point out is I'm looking for the partitioning node to partition our data into a training and test set for model building. I know that there is a node that's called partitioning. Why doesn't it show up here? You'll see there's a separation here now between a couple of nodes that show up immediately and a more advanced tab. And the idea here basically is that we don't immediately overload the users with all the compatible nodes that there are, but first of all, they see a limited set of nodes. And this limited set of nodes actually is right now focused on spreadsheet operation for spreadsheet users. So a lot about data transformation. There's also new nodes like a value lookup node, very similar to a VLOOKUP in Excel, for instance, row aggregations, row filtering, and all that. All those will be shown immediately. But as you are building models, for instance, when you use a partitioning node, there's the more advanced nodes tab here. You can easily add them. There's a setting, you can switch that so that it immediately shows you the advanced settings as well. So no need to worry over that. We'll partition our data, and I actually want to sample stratified or do a stratified sampling on our churn column because we want to predict the churn. It doesn't actually show in here because there's only strings. And I'll actually take that as a chance to show you something that has been in KNIME for quite some time, but not a lot of people actually know about it. So there's a transformation tab in the configuration dialog these days on every reader node. And that was actually added like a year and a half ago. And this is quite helpful because you can rename columns already after reading. You can also change types here. For instance, if I want the churn column that I want to use as a class, it needs to be a string, not a number. I can switch the type here to string. Then it can immediately see that down here, the churn column actually is a string column. So it's the small things that make life a little easier. You can go back to the partitioning, and now we can select the churn in here. I will build a decision tree, because then the part that I actually want to show you is for the compatible nodes. Maybe we can just search for row filter, for instance. Now you immediately see that I don't have any suggestions immediately because there's no node matching the row because it's not compatible with the model port. So we can search for predictor, and then we see here in the advanced tab all the predictors in here. You can take the decision tree predictor. Oh, let's turn on power. Let's hope that works. Otherwise, we'll be offline in a second. Oh, really? Okay, and it's loading. That's good. And now I've broken the golden rule of demos I've derived from my script. So in the decision tree, I actually need to change that to the churn column. Otherwise, we're predicting telephone numbers, and that's not actually what we want to do. Okay. And the interesting part, and that's where I actually want to quickly jump over and show you, okay, now we've built a model. Let's assume this model, we've evaluated it. I'm jumping that part right now. Let's see, accuracy is good enough. We've made sure that the model actually does what it's supposed to do. How do we actually get this model into production? And the first step of that would actually be, okay, we'll write the model into disk so that we can build a separate workflow that uses or applies that model to a different data set. What we'll do here is, again, we use the quick node adding node that's called the model writer that actually allows us to write the model out. We'll call that demo2 model. Save, okay, and execute. And now we actually see the demo2 model here in the node repository. So as I already mentioned before, next step would actually be to create a new workflow for the prediction. Let's do that. And first part, we'll read in the model. Obviously, I think that's the trained model. We need to read that for the prediction. We need a predictor. So I know that it's a decision tree. I have to scroll down. There's a decision tree predictor here. All right. What else do we need? The new data, the data that we want to apply the model to. I have prepared that already. So there's a new customer CSV. I'll just pick that up to spare you the details. I'll drag and drop that in here. Connect it to my predictor. Execute it and see with the node repository, with the node monitor down here, you can scroll to the very right, we actually get a column that predicts the churn in that case, right? So how I can now execute that locally, right? I could send around the workflow with the model basically so that people could execute locally, but that's not really the idea of a proper deployment. What I actually want to show you and quickly build is upload the CSV file. application. For that, there's actually only 2 nodes. Uploading, for uploading the files, you need more advanced node. Let's actually need to remove that. It's a node that's called the file upload widget. Let's call that a label, upload new customers. I will define a default file that would actually be my the data from my new customers. Run the workflow, and we hope. And in here, we basically say, no, okay, we don't want to during the process. I use a flow variable for that. Exactly. So the magic in here basically is now that I take this 2 nodes and I create a component for that. By Grab, actually, that every step in the workflow or in the data app on the web portal is actually a component, which is basically a composite of multiple widgets that you've seen, multiple visualizations or data uploads, things like that. So one component basically is rendered as one step in the interactive web application. That's our data upload step. And for the visualization, I'll take it easy. I'll just take a table view that shows me the entire output. And visualization. And that's basically all I need. I can take this workflow now. I can save it first of all, and jump over to the Space Explorer. And there's one thing that's really nice about the Space Explorer. When I'm connected, let's see if that actually works. When I'm connected, I can actually select the local space here, but I see also multiple spaces from KNIME Business Hub entities that I'm connected to. So we have a KNIME Business Hub that we're using for demo purposes. I've created a space on that. That's called a churn predictor. I can immediately select that, and I've already uploaded something here. And what we'll actually do is we jump back to the local space. We take my predictor workflow, can select that and say upload to hub. There's the KNIME Edo hub, and that's where I will upload this. Reset. Hopefully the connection holds. Upload will be done. And then I can actually log into the Edo hub. Sorry, it's a bit hard to see because of the bar here, but I'm actually logged into this very specific educational business hub in our case. I go to the main page. And this looks actually very much like if you've used the community hub before or a search engine for workflows and notes. This is basically a different instance that we have set up for workflow sharing, for component sharing, but also in this case, you can execute workflows on this business hub. And that can also answer one of the questions that someone in the audience had before about governance of workflows and making sure that you can share things. It's actually quite nice with a KNIME Business Hub. You can actually share components in here, and people can take these components and drag and drop them into their workflows. And you can version those components as well these days. You can really change the permissions that only teams, specific users can access those components as well. But I'm digressing. We actually want to deploy the workflow. So how does it look like? So I have a team. I have a space, a private space in that case. So it's only visible for people who are specifically added as collaborators to that team. And that's, in my case, that is just me here. We see our predictor workflow that I just uploaded. And again, until now, everything looks pretty much like on the community hub. And this is what the workflow that I've just created. So what we can do is from here, we can actually create a so-called deployment of that workflow that others can use. You see here, this is actually grayed out. And in order to create a deployment, we have to create a version of this workflow. So the idea here is that you can actually create deployments and say, okay, I want to deploy a data app from a specific version of a workflow, maybe from a past version. I can also create a deployment from younger versions. So the deployments are actually pinned to a specific version. Let's create one, call it demo. Create the version is created. We can close that. And now the deployment tab actually shows up in here. And what you'll see now, and you folks actually have mentioned it before, that you can schedule workflows on KNIME Server. This is also here. You can schedule workflows on KNIME Business Hub. You can actually deploy workflows as workflow services. But what I'm more interested in here is the deployment as a data app. You can say, create a data app. I can provide a name. I can categorize that. There's a couple more advanced settings that are not of interest for us right now. It says data app created. And here's actually an interesting bit and piece. So I can manage the access for this particular data app. So I can, for instance, say, well, only specific users should be able to access and execute this data app, be able to apply the model here, or I'll leave it open to anyone, basically. So with that, it works for users, but it also works for entire groups. So I can really drill down and add restrictions down to the deployment level. We haven't changed anything. And scroll down here, actually see that there is a deployment down here. And from such a deployment, and remember, a deployment actually is a specific version of a workflow that can now be executed. You can run that. And it opens up. And this is very similar to what the Grab folks, it's simpler, but what they've shown before with the web portal application that they have built, right? So this is the first component. It just tells me to upload new customers. I select the file here. Do that, select the new customers, open, says check mark, it's uploaded, you can zoom in. And the workflow is not executed. Let's open that up. What happened? Model reader, the selected mount point local is not connected. Yeah, that was a stupid mistake from me. The model is not deployed to the hub yet, so the workflow can't load it. We quickly go back to the workflow and actually say relative to current workflow. I don't have the demo model. I've already uploaded that to jump that and save that workflow. Upload it to hub. Reset. Okay, can override the existing item. Go for it. And the interesting part here now is if we cancel that and close that tab, we'll actually have a deployment that is tied to an old version of my workflow, right? So there is now a new edit here. Go into the history. Sorry, I need to reload that. So there are latest edits here. So I'll have to create a new version for the new deployment. But this actually allows us to make sure that data apps can actually only be released later, and it's not always the latest version of a workflow, which is really useful in a corporate environment. Say deploy data app. And you can actually select the version here if you want. I want the new version. Create. So there's the new deployment here. Run it. Select the file. and it finished successfully, but didn't show our visualization. That is interesting. I will, for the sake of time, not dig deeper into that, why this is happening. The idea behind that really is that you actually get this local table view shown in your interactive interactive data app. Good. As this was really just like a quick example just to show you how working with the Business Hub actually feels like, or how working with the KNIME server back then actually felt like as well. There's one last thing, because we actually have heard large language models and the catchphrase already. With the recent release, we have also added our KNIME AI assistant into the analytics platform. That actually has two modes. You can ask questions like, what is the best node for X and Y? But what actually is the more interesting feature, in my opinion, is that you can use the AI assistant to actually build entire workflows. So I can really ask it, and I will not show that now for the sake of time, because it might take a couple of seconds, but I can really ask it something like, I've written it down here, like build a workflow that reads the iris data set, filters the Virginica flowers, and plots a bar chart. And that really automatically creates and inserts the 3 nodes, a CSV reader with the iris data set. It inserts a row filter and filters the Virginica colors, and it adds a bar chart in the node, and you can really build your workflows with that as well. This is really only the beginning of that journey. We're optimizing that. That was really the outcome of a sprint of a couple of weeks of a couple of our developers. So there's definitely more to come in that direction, and more integrations of large language models. I'll quickly jump back to my slides, or maybe not. Technology is not favoring me today. Oh, yes. Thank you. So what I quickly wanted to show before I quit here, as already mentioned, I'm responsible for academic relations at KNIME. If you're an educator, if you're once now for benefits, there's a community of educators that we call the Educators Alliance. You can join that, and you can find more information on KNIME.com/educators. And what you, for instance, will get, which is quite useful, is teaching materials as an example. So there's a teaching materials repository. You will find the slide decks. You will find exercises for all the courses that we're offering on the various topics, like introductory courses, data literacy courses with the analytics platform. But for all the courses that you see here on the screen, you can get to the slide decks. You can reuse the slide decks. You can take out pieces, use them as is, as you like. The license allows for that. If you want to use it in teaching, you don't have to start from scratch, but there's the material and there's support from myself and the team. I'm around. If you have questions, please feel free, approach me. And with that, I would like to thank you. I hope you found this presentation interesting. Sorry for the kinks with the connection in between, but that happens when you do a live demo. Do you have any questions?
I'm speaking from the public body. I have 2 questions.
Please.
Just now we uploaded the flow to your hub. Okay, if you want to share with other people for other people to access, what's the requirement for the other people to access it? The other people need to register, how do you certify it? People to use it?
Yes, so they will actually, so one way, if you really want control over who has access, you will actually say, okay, users need to have an account, they need to log in, and then you can specifically specify in the access option for a deployment. You will say, okay, this person, you say they select their username, basically you'll say that the deployment will be shared with this particular username. We can say this deployment will be shared with a particular group of users, for instance. And what's quite nice, I'm not able to demo that now. There's actually a page that shows you shows you an overview of all the data apps that have been shared with you. So then they really can go in, they can click the data app, it fires up, they can use that data app. There's no browsing around in file folder hierarchies on the server anymore, but really an overview with a couple of categories, and then click, and the data app opens up to the users if it specifically has been shared with them. If you don't specify with whom it is shared, we assume that every user who has a login or has an account on the Business Hub can access the data app.
Okay, so in that case, so for all the users need to create an account in the NIME Hub, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
my next question is, because you have, I'm sure you have a lot of nodes already. So if I want to add some feature not available, can I design my customized node in the import to the system?
Yes. So there's two things. Let's be clear about the language. So yes, you can build a node that really also shows up in the node repository. That is possible. So you can either use Java to build that node, or with the last release, or since roughly about a year now, you can actually use Python exclusively to build the node. So that would be a native node in that sense. A slightly higher level version of that is, I've shown you the components. We've taken a couple of nodes and wrapped that into a component, right? That doesn't put any nodes into a component. So you could build it that you would to the Business Hub, and then or to the Community Hub basically, and then people can use a higher layer where you use KNIME functionality, where you use existing nodes to build components. Just an example, you could have a database access in there, or you could store access the database, just as an example. So but it could be any functionality inside of a component, basically. Sorry, that's a very long answer, but there's two levels to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Maybe we can take a look at the Q&A. Give me a second. I have some legacy KNIME workflows. When I upgrade to 5.1, would I be able to retain all the original nodes and the locations of the underlying workflows will be broken? And that's actually a good question. So the new user by default on new workspaces. So version of KNIME, it will fall back to good. I'm not sharing screen right now, but I will still continue to answer that. There were some significant changes to the workflow annotations. When you open them in the new user and the modern user interface, there will be a conversion happening. And as soon as you open them up with the legacy user interface, you will basically, as of now, you'll see them encoded as HTML. So there's one downside. So that's only that's one of the downsides of it. But in general, there's you don't have to be hesitant, because you can always switch to the legacy user interface. Good. There's a discussion already going on. I love that when attendees actually answer the questions. Annie Lee is asking, where would be a good place to get sample workflows? That is a very good question. That would actually be the Community Hub. If you go to hub.knime.com, this is our open instance, basically, where we have, I don't know the exact number, but I think something like 12,000 example workflows these days. So you go to hub.knime.com, and it really is a search engine for workflows, for components, but also for extensions. Type in your search terms and find the questions there. Thank you, Shantanu, for putting that link into the chat. Any questions from the audience? Yes, you can do that. You can also hook it up to something like Okta for authentication. You can theoretically use Google Mail accounts or Google Workspace accounts for authentication. That's, for instance, what we use internally because everyone has those already. So yes, that's possible, but there's also other possibilities. One thing that I should mention here as well, with the analytics platform, free and open source, KNIME Business Hub being a commercial product. So that's actually how we make our money in the end, right? If you use it for teaching or nonprofit research, there are academic licenses available. If you're interested in that, if you want to set it up yourself, want to use it for your teaching, for instance, show really deployment in action, please, you'll find information on knime.com/educators, or approach me and we can set you up with an academic license. More questions? If not, I would say thank you very much, also Rudy and Henry, for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's give our guests another round of applause. Thank you. We have a light refreshment outside. We can also mingle and maybe have some time with some private question if you want to have with our guests. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.